Okay, good afternoon, even if it's a minute early, but I'll start with the introduction. So thank you all for coming. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Luigi Zingales. I'm the faculty director of the Stigler Center. And we're very excited today to host the WAPAN for a conversation with our colleague Michael Minnis on the challenges and opportunities of big data and artificial intelligence in finance, economics, and more. First of all, thank you both for joining us to discuss this very important topic. Before we start, please note that we are on the record and live streaming, so everything you say here will be remembered forever. And please silence your phones. I appreciate that. As usual, the views expressed by our guests are their own, not those of the Stigler Center, let alone of the University of Chicago. As you may know, the Stigler Center promotes and diffuses research on regulatory capture and the various distortions that special interest groups impose on capitalism. We have many initiatives, including the Capitalism podcast, co-hosted by Kate Waldberg and myself. Please check it out and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast. Today, we look forward to an insightful conversation. But before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce our speakers. Wei is co-founder and chief scientist at the Thasos Group, which creates actionable information from real-time mobile location data. So this little gadget is very useful in many dimensions. He previously worked at Fidelity Investment and at Google Research China on Google's first real-time indexing system. He has spent the last 8 years studying, measuring, and predicting human and economic activities using modern sensing and modeling techniques. His research has been covered by many media outlets, including the New York Times, CNN, The Atlantic, Science, and more. Mike is an associate professor of accounting at Booth. He particularly enjoys identifying unique data and methods to empirically examine issues in a novel way. He's a member of the Private Company Council, which advises the financial accounting standard boards on private company matters. His research focuses on understanding the role of privately held companies in the U.S. economy, among others. He also investigates how financial reporting facilitates the allocation of capital efficiently. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
All right, thank you, Luigi. So thanks everybody for being here. I recognize most of your faces as you're currently students of my financial statement analysis evaluation, which is kind of what prompted this discussion. Thank you, Wei, very much for being here. I think I reached out to you, cold called you about 3 months ago. I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal covering Thasos, and before I finished reading the article, I sent you an email because I had to find out more here. So tell us, what is Thasos? Let's get started. What does Thasos do?
So Thasos is a company that I have co-founded and has been here for 6 years. We are around 40-some people, growing fast. We acquire a lot of data, primarily mobile location data from the phones that you have on your table in your pockets. We process this data, convert them into time series and very simple information that a hedge fund analyst can take in and making trade decision, investment decision on top of that. So essentially, we're a financial technology companies in this kind of emerging field called alternative data, and we are a leader in particularly in this location data business.
Okay, so Thasos is in the process not of collecting the data, but processing the data. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And let's talk a little bit about this data, and then we're going to kind of move into how this data might get used.
Yeah.
Where does this data come from? How do you get it?
So the data comes from primary apps. So if you install an app, whatever purpose the app is, most of them come free, right? And they will ask you for the location information and ask you if you permit them to collect that and use it for other purposes such as research and ethics. And usually, in return for service, you'll click yes, and that's how the apps collect locations. The largest data company or personal data company in the world are Apple, Google, Facebook. they will not sell this type of information to anyone, including the Wall Street. So we have to be creative and work with a lot of small data apps, vendors to acquire the data we collected and use them to picture together a large picture of the consumer, the US population, and provide analytics and service for our clients.
Okay. And so your value added in what Thasos is doing is in the processing of this data, is that right?
Yes, yeah. Currently, in the market, the difficulty is to process the data. The lower the value is at the low data. So location data is really cheap. There are other alternative data, product data is more expensive. But it's really hard to use location data. That's where we put the value here. This technology doesn't exist 10 years ago, the phone. It changes every half a year. The phone's using even more sensors and different technologies to get where you are. It's not just GPS. You don't get a GPS info, but it knows exactly which corner of the building you are in. That happens to develop very fast, which means if you want to provide a measurement for the last 3 years, 4 years, it's extremely difficult to normalize, to create a consistent data set measurements that you can compare this year to last year, a few years ago. That put an enormous challenge on data analytics. We have 10 top math PhDs in our company, simply not to solve the problem of how to train investors that data, but to make the data usable for the institutional investors to use. And that's really where we think the value are for us. Yeah.
So Thasos is a big data company. You're getting raw data from these apps, these phones, in terms of unique IDs and locations, right?
Yeah.
And so Thasos is Latin for "Where did I wake up this morning?" Is that right? Thasos knows where I am, right?
If you are in our panels, yes. But it's actually a concern everyone has that you have a phone. It's a lot of privacy issues. There's regulations and laws governing that. So you have the right to opt out, and you have the right to know what's going on with your data. On top of that, the hedge fund industry have an even higher compliance, and we set ourselves even higher compliance. So if Facebook collects your data, right, try to figure out exactly who you are, where you live, if you live next to hopefully, or try to sell for home sites to you. But what we do is more kind of an aggregated fashion. So we get data anonymized. We only look at places of people to try to figure out how many people go to shopping, not like who goes there. So that's really the difference. So legally, technically, we create a lot of these barriers for us to ensure that the user's privacy is preserved as much as possible. Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to some of these other issues. First, let's talk a little bit about how the data is used.
Yeah.
So what you once again, you receive kind of a time series snapshot for unique user IDs that are attached to certain phones.
Yeah.
You then convert that data into usable, actionable information. Tell us a little bit about that process. It's really interesting. But you have individuals that are students currently that come and work and do manual types of labor. Actually, tell us a little bit about how you translate that.
Yeah. So it's kind of straightforward, right? If I want to figure out if you or anyone's phone has been inside a Home Depot, right? I need to know where the Home Depot is. And there's not today there aren't any databases providing this building footprint. So we always have 5, 6 rotating interns. We call data technicians to help us figure that out. So we have people come in, since we're in New York, Union Square, so many of them are NYU students, and they come in on a map system we developed to draw their polygons, which is basically the boundary of every single building in the US. And we do that for millions of these buildings, and we label them with what they are, what's the parking lot, what's the building, that's kind of process. It's the first step we do when we take the data. The second step is we have a lot of data. We use that building footprints to try to figure out what percentage of our panels have visited these locations. Again, this comes with a lot of data analytics and machine learning because data is so noisy. So if you are in the building, it can be you're just driving by, right? So so you have to tell using many different ways what that is. What is that visitation? It's employee or just a drive-by. The third step is we have a lot of different data vendors. We have to merge them all together into a single view of how the traffic actually is. This is a lot of challenging quantitative research work. And essentially, the final product, for many of us, is very simple. It's one number per day, tell you how many people actually visited Home Depot or any other companies, right? So as an analyst on the buy side, you can easily roll up by month, by quarter, do a year-over-year, and try to predict sales.
So part of the technology or part of what you're doing is you obviously how do you purchase this data? That's correct, right? The raw data is something that you purchase from these apps, these providers. Yeah. You're adding your value by having the secret sauce of what you have. Yeah. Is not the output of how to trade on it and not the raw data, but it's the processing of that information into actionable information. Yeah. So it's taking those coordinates, plotting it, and knowing precisely where users are at any given point in time.
Yes, yes.
Now, let's talk a little bit about how your end users kind of use this data. Yeah. So you update them how often?
It's daily, but today in the standards we update weekly with daily information. Yeah.
With daily information. Who are some of your customers? Whether you name names or not, but what types of businesses are they in?
I think most of our clients are hedge funds or institutional investors. So the big sharks of Wall Street, many of them are. We're getting more and more kind of traditional business, large institutional investors, mutual funds, real estate investors, things like that. But the people who adopt, like any new technology on Wall Street, the first people who adopt them are the fastest, the tigers of the market. They are most often hedge funds.
Very good. And one of the reasons that what I found so interesting here is in FSA and valuation, we focus a lot on analyzing and understanding financial metrics and that kind of thing. But oftentimes, it's these alternative data sources, such as one you have, that gives us the extra edge that other investors aren't able to see in the market. Yeah. And traditionally, things that I've talked about are satellite photos, credit card streams. Yeah. Talk a little bit about, I thought it was really interesting as investors thinking about those alternatives to understanding, kind of compare and contrast your product to some of these other products that have kind of been more historically in the market. What are some advantages or disadvantages of these other big data sources?
Yeah. First, alternative data is more become a mainstream thing. Right? So if you are a firm, you are saying you are leaders in hedge fund investments, and you don't use that data, you are not the real player. So it's become more and more mainstream, like you said.
But FSA gets you a really long way. Right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
That's for sure. Yeah. So it doesn't predict. People always ask me that, exactly what can you predict? We don't predict. We merely measure. There's a difference. And by looking at financial statement, you can see a big picture of a company. It can predict its performance down the road, right? We don't do that. None of the alternative does that. We are just telling you the truth as it comes in. So this is the difference. So we never predict what's going to happen. I just tell you exactly what happens. So saying that, I think the credit card data is probably the most mainstream, most widely adopted data. It completely changed the dynamic. It makes hundreds of thousands of sales-side analysts losing their jobs. And to a degree that we hire someone, if we hire a sales guy, we'll see an MD from a bank doing, equity sales business, they just don't have any business these days. But it's think about retailers, right? Covers really well, in terms of credit card data. But like any other data sets, there are problems. The main credit data provider these days in the street have a small panel, a few million users, yeah. And because the data is collected through many indirectly, through many steps, it doesn't have a lot of additional information, about which location, which region, the sales happens, right? You see a transaction, but you don't know exactly where it happens. That limits a lot of the analysis, especially if you want to dig deeper into the company. The second point of that is, if you think about the credit data today, every hedge fund has it. So if you are right, you use the data correctly, you may not make money today. 2 years ago, you made money, today, no. But if the data was wrong, it happens pretty frequently these days. You lost a lot of money. You see these retail stocks sometimes lost 10%. That's the value when you have a data set like us, which bring additional value by having a much larger panel, higher accuracy in many of the names and credit card data, and that helps a lot with retail investment. You mentioned the other one is satellite. It's also, I think, pretty popular, but the adoption rate is pretty low. Satellite doesn't go around the Earth every 10 seconds, It takes about every month, a satellite can probably see 10% to 30% of the US in a month, which means your coverage is low. You see a store only once a month at a certain hour of the day, right? So I always told that the satellite, a lot of people agree with me that you guys are really brave if you want to get into the retail electric space. Satellite is not good for this. It's good for for cost analysis, and it's good for energy. I look at the oil tank, and it has been a pretty successful application. But beyond that, I don't see many success with satellite data these days.
So you talked about 3 million customer card users roughly in that credit card panel.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
We cover around 10% of the US population, aggregating all our data source that it has a constant panel. We source probably globally more than 500 million users. Doesn't mean we use all this data. Yeah.
Is that right? So there's a good chance that you know that where most of us are, or many of us are at any given point in time, and our habits in commuting and shopping and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we have that data. It's anonymized, but there are definitely technology can figure that
I
out.
have to tell you, before I emailed it, the first thing I did was to go through and check all my apps and see what I had on there. Tell us a little bit about that process. What are some of your concerns? We'll hold the ethical and other types of kind of societal concerns aside. Just from a data quality perspective, you talked about there being some user bias in the credit card data, for example.
Yeah.
What are your concerns about data quality and making proper inferences from the data that you have here?
The bias is always there. So I think I'm not going to talk about credit card. It's something we don't touch for now. But in the location data, it's extremely biased. So one example, if you use Android, on average, not a particular person, but on average, probably your income is $5,000 to $10,000 lower than average income, US income. If you use iPhone, it's the other way around. So if you use, just by a particular phone type, you only collect data from Android, you are looking at lower demographic, low income demographic, right? That goes on and on with terms of regional bias. Different regions have different adoption cell phone rate. In terms of ages, low, high, just people are older, senior, less likely to have this kind of phone, or less likely to install any app. My mom doesn't know how to install app, right? So that's really the bias. It's tremendous. It's huge. That's why a simple, straightforward analytics doesn't work. And we see that, especially for our data, again and again, is many of our clients said, I don't want to pay you guys. It's a black box. I don't trust black box. I want to do all the research myself. And they hire a group or team in a hedge fund, and they try and they fail, and they come back to us. Happen quite frequently, because all this issue is not as simple as straightforward as this. It takes a lot of statistical thinking to practice. And we are still not 100% figured out. We're still on our way. We think we're the best doing that, but still there are a lot of things happening every day. Things changing very quickly that we need to adjust for to get better and more accurate measurements.
So so I know how many users go to Home Depot in a given day. How are hedge funds using your data? So what? What are they doing? You started a hedge fund initially, right?
Yeah.
Before you eventually closed that down just to full-time do this product. What are they doing with the data?
So it's also changing. Fintech or financial technology is slow. So we are not as quickly. We try really hard, but we are not as quick as a tech company. And this is also a slow process. Today, I think we're at the end of phase 1 in using alternative data. That is most driven by so-called event-driven trading. So basically, you have a data, right? Coming to you every day. You can do your year-over-year, figure out based on quarter to date, what's the sales number going to look like? Whether it's credit card data, our data. You do the similar thing in your Excel sheet, and then you look at where the street is for the expected sales number from the sales side, and then look at what's the whisper number. The people, the old way of doing retail analytics, what they think is the number, and you see if there's a disagreement, and that's your edge. So you get into the market anticipating when the company actually release the number by the end of the quarter, usually 3 weeks after the quarter ends, there will be a surprise. And that surprise comes with a huge price movement. And you either long or short, right? But you try to profit from this price movement. You can do it much faster in a computer, but essentially that's the idea. And that's how you currently use alternative data. And that's really the thinking today for most hedge funds. But with the end of this, because everyone today have a lot of data, everyone try to get in at the same direction. Everyone gets credit card data or our data. They all know, Chipotle Home Depot does poorly this quarter, does better this quarter. No one makes money. It doesn't move when a surprise comes. So it is surprise, no one is surprised. So, but if the surprise comes in the wrong direction, then it moves, tremendously, 20%, 30%, like this world is going to end. That's where it is now. Therefore, the stage today at Wall Street, the investment and the hedge fund community is go beyond this phase one, the kind of simple way of using the data. Think about a better way of using the data, right? Rather than trade the sales number, headline number, how can we use the data to understand this is better? And then I can maybe figure out secondary, kind of secondary financial, not just the top line number, but other things in the financial report that I can predict. That's really the thinking. The phase two also, we actually help a lot with pushing this phase two, is to get your focus outside retailer industry. Retailer in the US is very well covered. It's the most best covered industry of all stock market of the world. So if you are in there, it's a crowded space. But there's industry we cover in terms of factory output, in terms of commercial real estate properties. There is very little information out there. That means if you have an edge, you actually can make a lot of money. So I think today the alternative business is going to the end of phase one, the simple event-driven idea, to the phase two, to look at other opportunities and deeper analysis.
So, pardon me. So in some sense, the data providers are capturing the alpha in this sense, in that if you're a hedge fund out there, you've got to buy your data just to get back to par in some sense.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
One of the things you're talking about, the kind of the business model, better understanding the business. You were sharing an interesting kind of case study with me this morning about in real estate, specifically about the malls. Share with everybody the story about how you essentially upset a lot of the mall operators in some sense, with some of the data what you revealed.
Yeah, I think long story short, so the city in 2017, at that time, there was a mall apocalypse, right? I think today is better, but 2017, everyone is, all the mall, shopping malls are depressed in their equity price, in the credit rating they have. And people are saying the shopping mall is dying. That was dying. That was really the deal at that time. But if you talk to all the shopping mall operators, if you're dying for their earning release call, the operator always claim that they're, I think I was talking about Simon Property Groups of the world, right? Who owns the largest, the best, the premium shopping malls in the world. They always claim that traffic is positive or stable, right? That's the argument on one side. They always say that, I have this property, I have sensors, it was positive, people cannot find a parking lot, right? That's one side of the story. Another side of the story is if you kind of get focus on department stores, many other retailers, Macy's, JCPenney, at the time were reporting -8, -7. This is like, in terms of their same-store sales. That's their sales of the same-store base, common measure for the department stores.
So the actual retailers were getting hit.
Yeah.
The mall operators were saying we're seeing positive traffic growth.
Exactly. So think about this market tension. You have two stories. You have either of them are right? And being expert of financial reports, there's regulations. This same-store sales is actually an objective measure. You cannot lie about that, right? Traffic, the mall never said what their traffic are because they don't have sensors in all their properties. They have sensors on some property, and they can choose which property they want to talk about. So there will be, I have this property, it's great. No one can find a parking lot. Therefore, our traffic is strong, right? The logic flaw is, one cover all. And we released the report in 2017 publicly, and we basically claimed that the large shopping mall at that time, the traffic declined at -5, -7. Just like the traffic decline reported by all the department stores, right? And then, a lot happened. Long story short, there was an earnings call right after we released the reports for the mall operators. and there's some concerns from this earning calls. They didn't talk about the traffic directly, and the stock goes down dramatically after we release the report until the earning release. And I think all the operators are pretty angry about us, and they call us, try to figure out what our methodology, try to poke hole in our methodology. But essentially, what we are showing in our report is just saying, hey, if you talk about this mall, yes, we measured this mall, just this particular mall. It is what you said. It is positive traffic. But we look at all your property, it is not. It is negative traffic. It is exactly what the executives in the department store industry are telling the world. It's not your story. It's their story that seems to be more reasonable. And that's really what happened with that. And you can install census, right? But what we do better is that we can measure any property. If an owner installs census, he can choose to report or not, but we can measure all the property and report on all the property's traffic. It's kind of, we are not bound, constrained by the owners, which we can measure, which we can report. We just measure all of them. Yeah. That's really the story happened last year. And we actually started to do a lot of business in the industry, and the industry started to be more welcoming us and work with us more. A lot of operators become our clients. So that's what happened in the last couple of years. So it didn't start well.
So essentially, they didn't know themselves their own business fundamentals in some senses. How many people were actually showing up the properties, except for a select few properties where they had installed sensors?
Exactly, yeah.
And so now they went from being kind of your enemy to being a customer because they want you to track what their own traffic is as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
How do you get a sense of how they are using it to fundamentally run their business? So what I also found interesting when I initially started reading about what you're doing, the hedge fund kind of idea immediately came to mind, but as it turns out, we're actually using this to get a better sense of how to run businesses and operate the economy too.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how do you think those on the operations side are using their data?
Sure, the simple usage they want to know is they want to know the traffic of their malls, right? Which they actually don't know. So later on, they don't know. They don't have much idea. It's very expensive to install the sensor. Even so, you don't have historical data. You only know what traffic is now. You don't know the past, so you don't know if it's growing or declining, right? So they rely on us in terms of that. But on operations side, I think the two ways. One is they can understand, what's the best tenants to bring in, what kind of trade area people come from, right? You can draw a circle around the mall, but that may not be the people come from. If you have a Whole Foods at high-end shopping targets, you have people come from high-end income and range, right? So they can understand their shoppers better. I think more importantly, we're seeing that this industry, real estate industry, start to use traffic not as peripheral measurements to understand the property. It begins to think it as one of the main factors they should build into their valuation model. Today, retail is not about shopping. People go there to see the experience, have a nice dinner, right? So sales doesn't matter. The sales can happen online. You have a store there. It gives you a chance to experience. You don't need to necessarily buy it right there. And that's the case with Tesla, Apple, and all these things. So it doesn't matter to think about a sales per square foot. These are traditional measurements for properties. It's actually better to think traffic in terms of what kind of people you are bringing, the amount, quantity, and the quality of your visitors. So we are really seeing this industry changing, and hopefully we are part of that. We're pushing this moving forward. It's to really change fundamentally the valuation model for real estate, for commercial real estate.
Do you see part of your model being contracting with these and setting rental lease expenses according to how much traffic the mall is actually able to attract? And do you think the data could ever get, or we could actually contract on that?
Yeah, our clients using that, to do similar things, to convince the tenants to stay, and the tenants will use that to convince the landlord to lower the rent. Depends on what the data says, the outcome can be dramatically different. But that's definitely a use case we see show pretty frequently. Yeah.
So one other area where, so you've got the real estate, you have, kind of certainly understanding the retail market. The other one I find interesting is thinking more about macroeconomic data, things like productivity, and tell us a little bit about how you track employees going to factories and other places to kind of think about the production side.
I think this is one of the advantage of our allocation data. When I started this, I was thinking location data is more pervasive in terms of measurements. So this is really the case. It measures a lot of industrial performances. So what we look at, we actually cover about 100 actually this is a new product we're trying to push to the mass market now. And we look at the factory activities, basically how long people spend time there in terms of employee working hours, how many shifts, do people work on the weekend, do people do additional shift in the evenings, and that gives you a sense of productivity, because today, even with AI automation, a lot of industries, especially auto, whether it's Tesla factory or it's a GM factory, rely on people to put the cars together. So you kind of have a strong correlation between these employment hours versus the productivity, and which is basically a company's decision to increase inventory. When people produce more, the company is saying, we have a lot of times we need to produce more to increase the inventory. That's really the case. So our data can measure that. And today, the market knows very little about the industry, about this kind of things happening. Unlike consumers, the market knows very little. And that's really, we've seen that we're bringing a lot of value to the market, to the financial investment these days.
Where does that type of information go? Do hedge funds also care about that kind of input type of data as well? Who's is the Federal Reserve contacting you? Who's using this?
Hedge funds are dying for that information. We haven't got product ready, and we have people calling and saying, when can we have that, when can we have that? That's really the hedge fund there, because they see it as what discussed a phase 2 of alternative data. It's really the edge, and everyone wants to be the first to do that. Federal Reserve, on the other side, government, Census Bureau, is very slow. They, I don't think they're aware of that. Also, I don't think they are willing at this stage since we change quickly on the road, I don't think at this stage they will consider alternative data as one of their inputs. It's just simply not considered, and it's information. Even when they come to us, we may provide that for free. They probably will discard that in terms of their decision-making progress. But because they are handling something very delicate, it's the U.S. economy. I think that's the right decision to do, to wait and see how these play out.
Yeah. So in terms of the business model that you have, who are your competition? You mentioned Google, Apple, and Facebook readily collect this information, but they're not disseminating it broadly. Who are your competitors, and where do you kind of see this space going in terms of alternative data?
So, we can play a unique function in the market, right? Many of our data vendors used to be our competitors, but they realized this gap we're filling is actually a very wide gap. So I think after trying for a couple years, many of them just decided to let us do what we do best. So they were the competitors. I don't think there are that many these days. In 2017, 18, we actually had a lot of competition from the people who supply data or try to supply data to us. That's because this data set is just extremely noisy, very difficult to use, and require upfront research investment, pretty much a lot on these to get it work. So that's really where I see our competition. So we're kind of unique. We have some small players try to duplicate what we do, but I think we, in terms of location data, are the farthest in terms of technology investments. So that's really what we see here in our space. I think the broad trend in alternative data is that a lot of big firms are trying to get into this space. Bloomberg, Backstats of the world. We all have partnership with them, so they work with us. But they are trying to own this piece as well, because they think this is the future of financial information technology. So I think we're going to see a lot of big players get into this space in whatever way, acquisition or partnership or things like that. We're also going to see a lot of the vendors or another company like us start to work with other vendors or other companies with other different type of data sets, so that we are not provide a single data source or results from analytical data source. We're trying to provide a solution for our hedge fund clients, so they can understand that a particular company better from different views, different data sources, and a consolidated view. And we can internally help the fund to figure out the companies between different data and give them a coherent view. So you will see company alternative data companies become larger and larger, and become like a dominant player, one of the dominant players in in Wall Street. I think that's a trend that's going to happen in a couple of years.
Well, this, I think, is a good time to turn into some maybe societal or ethical kinds of considerations, and maybe to put a plug in for Luigi's discussion. Is this capital is or capitalism? And how do we think about this issue? And I think kind of on the one hand, society could benefit by better, more efficient capital allocation. If we know where consumers are going, how traffic's moving, where labor is moving, people can really use that efficiently and maybe allocate our resources better.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's serious privacy concerns that are going on here, especially as you start to think about these big data.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess how do you think about that? Just as a broad question.
I think I would separate this question into two parts. The first part is this the social goods part, right? When I started doing this, I was still a PhD student at MIT, and I have a training in computer science, machine learning, but I was studying this finance, a lot of finance data stuff, and I was looking into economic measurements. Today, how Census Bureau does our economic metric, right? And I look at how they did it, how they're currently doing it. It was very lagged. It have a lot of parameters. Most of the parameters value come from a survey. So essentially today, the Census Bureau's methodology come from what we have developed in the 30s of the last century, from the previous Great Depression. And this shocks me a lot as it's like just new to economics. Because if you're any science, right, if you're physics, right, Einstein cannot develop relativity unless we can measure the speed of light correctly. If you cannot have the measurements correctly, how can you develop theory? And how can you make policies, right? This is a problem, and this is a problem we still suffer today. I was just talking to this December, I don't know if you guys watch the market, this December retail sales number. It comes from year from positive 3.4 to negative 4. Like a depression just happened, a dramatic recession.
Retail sales.
The Census Bureau's retail sales number for December, the advanced one, so the first release, was down negative 4. If you look at chart, it's like, like a crash, and where does that come from, right? It just.
And so you're not seeing that.
I wouldn't see that, and no one else sees that except Census Bureau. So this creates a lot of problems, right? And this is really tied to the topic is why this data I help for is essentially I was the accidental entrepreneur. We just discussed it. I want to be academic. I want to build new technology to measure, to replace or help some functionality of Census Bureau to help you measure economy on a real time or close that to real time basis. Objective and same measurements across different regions, different countries, so you can compare different countries, understand economy better. That's really the goal, and I think that's a novel goal, and that is really how data can help us. On the other side, privacy definitely is an issue, and I think it will continue to be an issue, and especially the perception in the last couple of years. Not because of us, but the big player, Facebook, create a lot of attention from the public towards the privacy issue. And I don't think simply because there's some privacy concern, you should stop doing something, right? It's simply because something is bad. There's certainly something that have some percentage that is potentially bad. You should close the whole thing, right? That's not the right thing to do. This is a big industry on data, not just us. But I also think that in the U.S. especially, the regulatory is need to catch up in terms of privacy. The California has passed a law, it will be effective January 1st, and we all have to follow that law in terms of help users to manage their data, manage privacy concern, get easier opt-in, opt-out for users, better disclosure. And I really think that in a regulated market down the road, it will be less a concern for privacy, and people will trust the government, the regulatory body, and the self-regulatory body. There are a lot of these in this industry to make sure that all these important things are met and everyone's information are protected and people own their data, not us.
And what type of regulation would you see coming down to kind of think about these types of issues?
So there's already one which goes to effect on May 28, 2018, and it's called GDPR,
Yep.
General Data Protection Regulations, EU directive, I think. So it is effective for all the European countries and anyone that's business in Europe or have users that are Europeans. The new one is coming up in CCPA, is a California one. It has a lower bar, but it already passed, so it's coming. I think there are a few other states, Washington, New Jersey, are thinking about similar laws, but I think what's going to happen is the federal government will create a law to cover all of these. So that's happening, yeah.
Well, we should be explicitly opting into, in some sense way, I feel like you owe me some money.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing all this market research, I'm walking around with my cell phone. And I think you ought to pay me a dime every time I walk someplace. What do you think about that?
I think that is the right thing to do. You know, if we make money, we should pay.
This being the University of Chicago, there's a market solution here. Just break out your wallet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's probably you can indirectly benefit from that because most apps don't charge you a dime for the service they provide you in exchange for data, right? You know, Facebook, Google, your local app does that. But I think so. Yeah, I actually think that if people make money out of your data, people should get rewarded for that. And I hope that, you know, when the lawmakers and industry evolve, you know, it will reach that point. That you can value your data, you can decide what to do with your data. Yeah.
One last point on this. How do you feel about the notion of, say, insider trading? And let me put some parameters around this. Alternative data sources, I'm assuming you're not cheap, right? I can't just pay you a few dollars and have you do all this analysis, right? How do we think about that? Let me give you an example we were just talking about this morning where you've provided data to hedge funds and all your analysis.
Yeah.
And then a few weeks after that, you release a report talking about mall trends or whatever else. And effectively, they've already kind of front-run this information that you're releasing.
Yeah.
How do you, does that bother you? Do you think about that? How do we think about the factors? Is it just, hey, buyer beware and get out of the market if you're a small player?
I mean, in terms of insider trading route, because it's always a concern. You know, we are subject to hedge fund compliance standard, and if you don't know today, the standard is really, really, really high in terms of privacy, in terms of anything we do. You know, we are not a market participants, right? We used to run hedge funds in business, and we closed that fund. We kind of run to 100 million, so you kind of reach the bar of success and continue to do that. And because we want to sell the data, we kind of give that up simply because of that. You cannot be a direct market participant. You are selling this information that anyone with money, you know, can, if they can afford that, they can buy it, right? So because it's a thing you can purchase, the information the analytics we did, we send out, it's not private information, right? So that, I think that answers the question about the part that is that the inside trading. But one step backwards, let's think about a scenario, right? If you're a hedge fund, right? If you buy credit card data and you are the only one who owns that credit card data and you trade on it, right? It is more or less inside trading because, you know, it's kind of private information you have as material. You kind of can guess the sales, and you only have it. No one else had that. You know exactly what the company's financial is going to look like this quarter, and people get. I think actually people actually went to jail for that exactly issue. I think there's someone from Capital One did that. But if you take the location data, you don't assume that you are the only one who own that data, who have that data, right? You spend 10 PhD like what we did, right? 3 years try to crack how to use that data, right? There is a legal argument saying that because it's your scale of using the data that makes you the money. Because of that, you make money because your skill sets, not the information. But the information is noise. No one can use the data. Then there's argument. I don't know the answer, but there's argument that it may not be insider trading. So that's that in terms of the trading. But I think, you know, I think it's always a good thing. People knows better of the business. People knows the economy better. I believe in transparency, you know, in organizations. So I think to capitalism.
So
it's a good
capitalism.
thing.
Yes.
Capitalism, I think it's a good thing. You know, it essentially help protect the investors, protect people's retirement. If the people who are running on money knows better about what's going on out there, it's always a good thing. Yeah, that's my belief.
Let's open the floor for some questions here, if we have any. Just one here in the middle. Wait for the microphone to get there so that everybody can hear.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. You mentioned quickly GDPR and the implication of that in the U.S. Aren't you a little worried that you would see an increasing amount of people, deciding not to share their data? Personally, I was working on that at IBM Watson, and what we saw in Europe actually was a lot of people shutting down any kind of access to their data, which obviously makes it quite hard to exploit any kind of access.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's what should happen. I mean, we did some experiment, right? Depending on what app you have. If you own a web app, right, the chance you'll shut it off is probably 5–10%. If you own some other app, that's a while ago there's this kind of a light app, I don't know, flashlight app on your iPhone. You click it, you turn it on, click it, it turns the flashlight on. As simple as that. And that thing is 60 megabytes to download. And they collect every day from every single sensor on your phone. They use it to collect data. If you got everything installed,
if I turn my flashlight on, it's
not
giving that much information.
That's the Apple now have come with flashlight functionality, but a while ago it doesn't exist. You have to install the app. And the purpose of this app is to get information. And this is brutal, this is unethical, and this was terrible, and this was really what people shouldn't do. I really anticipate these kind of participants, market participants, because the regulation was kicked out, get fined hugely, go to jail, and I want the legitimate apps with legitimate users, and I hope percentage of the user will choose to opt in because the additional service the app will provide with your data, right? So that's my anticipation. It will decrease. That's just the case. And we will have better players, and we will work with them. And in aggregation, get more users to our measurements. I think that's my answer to the question. I think it's better to have regulation than we play in the dark. That's my general point of view, because that scares me the most. When there's a regulation, we know everything, we can anticipate, we can plan for it. That helps a lot. Yeah.
Wait, thanks a lot for coming in. I want to get your thoughts on the arms race for proprietary data sets.
Yeah.
There's this one author, Seth Davidovitz, he wrote Everybody Lies, and he makes the argument that it's not the quantity or the size of your data set that matters, but rather the novelty, right? So if everyone has credit card data, you can't generate an edge. If everyone has location-based data that you're selling, the edge gets competed away. So where do you think the edge is going?
Yeah, I think it's just from the business point of view, right? I run a company, so if everyone buys my data, perfect. If you don't make money, I don't care. It's not you or you, right? So not my problem. But it's the case. Alpha will always become beta. I think if you ever have work experience in this industry, you will know that. In a quant firm, a strategy will work for merely a few months and stop working. So, we're just discussing this general philosophy question is, what makes good firms, good investment companies good? What makes Renaissance so good? What makes Renaissance making so much money? It's not because their algorithm is so good that everyone's makes so much money for the last many years, right? It's because they have a great team, great process, and great innovation that continue to figure out what's going on in the market. I think the similar idea applies to us here. On one side, there will be more and more data coming out, and we'll be leading the effort, try to collate all of the efforts to work on new data sets, help investors find value. But on the other side, we also want to innovate and try to find more values, more insights from the existing data, and that's why you can continue to create alpha. So finance is always a dynamic process. That's why people there want to make a lot of money, because it's really tiresome. If you don't make a lot of money quickly, you'll run out of your juice very soon. That's really this business. So you have to innovate. You have to build team process to keep generating new alphas. Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of, what is it, the queen bee and what's the, you're running just as fast as you can just to keep in place, right?
Yeah.
And that's effectively what.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to get back to the privacy question and just capital markets. We know markets fail when incentives aren't aligned.
Yeah.
And I think with Facebook, Equifax, et cetera, we've seen a lot of examples so far of firms aggregating this data and then not having the incentives aligned to protect it.
Yeah.
Like both firms have essentially walked away free despite harming a lot of people, Equifax in particular.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to prevent some of these really bad regulations from coming into effect,
Mm-hmm.
what argument would you make for why your incentives are aligned as much as like the 10% of the American population whose data you've aggregated? How are your incentives aligned to protect that data as much as every individual would want it to be protected?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the regulations are bad. They are good. I think my whole point is that I wanted to have regulations, and it helps. And many of our hedge funds choose us because we have better compliance, because we have invested a lot on this side, so we have better compliance. And it's the sole reason they use it, not because like they have CL data. It's best. They're like, our lawyer, our compliance team, you are the only one that can pass this bar. That's why you are chosen. I mean, I think it comes at many different favor in terms of privacy. Technology-wise, right? We take all the data come to us anonymized. Doesn't mean you cannot reconstruct that. There are technology or papers on that, so I'm not going to go deep into that. But many of the data coming us even without identified, basically is a time and location. So someone, a person show up in a place, that's really what we get. It's just to that degree, right? And we are also pushing technologies to do so-called underflat analysis. That rather than taking this data with some kind of anonymized UID, we process what we need, throw away everything. That's really what we think is the technology-wise we're going to push. So basically, make it technically impossible to use what we have in storage to reconstruct the person. Now, that only works for us because we use aggregate data. We only care about aggregate statistics. We don't care about individual person. This will not work for Facebook because they want to sell ads to each individual, and every individual is different. So we actually can do that, and we're developing technology to do that. On top of that, the IT security, we spend money just to do the best we can, buy the best stuff, solution we can buy. But and compliance-wise, we have a lot of legal compliance rules for employees put into places. So overall, and I'm hoping there will be laws so our vendors and us can comply with law, give users more options to opt out. So overall, all these things come towards, I think, a better way or a better future of data monetization and privacy. Not that we are not going to use any data at all, right? So that's really where I see this industry will go, and
Just real quick, is there any way, and we got a question down here too, I used to consider myself tech savvy until my 8-year-old showed me how to do something on my phone. Is there any way to go in and just blanket opt out of you tracking me? Or not you, I keep saying you, it's the apps that are doing it. There's no easy way to do that right now, is that right?
There's an option in iOS and Android, especially the latest version. If you upgrade your phone, and there's actually something do not track button. It disables most of the tracking functionality of all your apps. And it is actually the standard cloud many of our vendors provide to their users, so you can do that. All you need to do is read their privacy policy, and they tell you exactly how to do that. Yeah, it definitely is possible.
Just to follow up on the questions that we've had. So now if more people start, because of data protection laws and privacy laws, are starting to opt out, the opting out is going to be non-random, right? And so have you thought about it, like what do you do about the sort of selective opting out and how that is going to skew your data? Because this is going to be differential across retailers, products, the type of services that people might consume.
Yeah, I think for sure. So we have this goes a little bit technical, right? And we developed this in-house for many years. We have a general framework to adjust for any bias. And the idea is very simple. The idea is for every small area in the US, like a neighborhood, a few blocks, we look at what people are in our panel. And we look at, what is the Census Bureau's there are statistics about the general demographic from their ACS or Census Bureau survey, the general demographic in terms of everything. So income, marriage, rent house, own house, everything. Look at what we have, and the idea is try to it just goes to machine learning dynamically adjust the bias. So technically, it's not perfect, but we do have a system to detect and adjust any bias that can have in the data to the possible as we can. And that really, this is one bias. We have many, many different biases. Apps have bias. By the way, if you have a web app, guess which state is the most undersampled? You guys want to take a guess?
The most undersampled
Means that people lack this population sampling rate in terms
with
of
the weather app.
with any web app.
Hawaii.
Yeah, we don't cover Hawaii, so it's too silly.
New Mexico, Arizona, or something.
California. Anyway, actually, California is the least sampled. So very few people use it. Which two states are the most sampled and have the most users in terms of percentage of overall population? Two states.
New York. So,
Colorado.
Minnesota.
Texas and Florida.
Texas and Florida.
Yeah. So you know where to invest your next home. Yeah.
And I think we have a
So
question here.
if you have a sustainable business model, it means that your clients, whether hedge funds or other people, are making money off your data.
Yeah.
Now, what does it tell us about the kind of aggregate information the digital platforms, Facebook and Google, they have much more information that is probably in a big scale more accurate than yours. So what does it tell us about the value of information that those people have?
I think it's tremendous. I tell everyone and our investors that if Google tries to compete in our business, we're close tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's a gap that the big player won't participate, And I mean, later on, I realized this is actually a wrong statement because, we know the data itself has a lot of issues, so Google has to invest a lot to do that, and the question is return rewards and the perception, whether it's worth them to do that. They're most likely no, And so, but they have a lot of data. That's a lot of value, and I think they're only at the edge of the iceberg in terms of the value they discovered. That's why the stock price is, I don't know, 10,000.
Let's go back to anonymized data, because there is an old paper showing that if you can detect where CEOs fly with their jets, this is public information, you also can predict mergers. Because if you two CEOs meet at some place, then so you have access to location data, including the CEOs. So you know when they play golf together, you know if they spend vacation together. So hedge funds using that to predict mergers, and to what extent this is sort of against what you were saying before, that all the stuff is anonymized and all that.
We can't do that. I mean, our compliance particularly lists that as one thing we cannot do, and we cannot look at it. There's a certain threshold number of people below. If the behavior is below this group of people, it's on individual level, we simply, our rule says we cannot do that. Even, it's anonymized, even figure out the technology, figure out who are the CEO, we can't do that. We simply cannot. It's just part of our compliance.
This will not be the first or the last time that hedge funds do not follow the rule.
I was actually pretty surprised when I entered into this industry, is realized that how tight the compliance are these days. And these are definitely...
But from your perspective, you don't give out, you get data that is anonymized, it's got an ID with it, so it has it.
Some of that.
The data that you turn around and sell out is all aggregated.
Aggregated, exactly.
So they would, if the hedge funds were doing that, they wouldn't be getting it from you, is that correct?
Yeah, they have to do it through some other means.
From the primary source that you're getting your data.
Yeah. Exactly.
Question here, then one back there. Whoever's got, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so one question I have is that you mentioned that these data, especially those high-frequency data, are used by both investors and the firms themselves. So I just wonder whether this myopic thing comes to those either investors or firms, basically by measuring things in a more accurate and more frequent ways, and maybe people are putting more weight on those high-frequency recent events, so that maybe affect firms' long-term strategy. So do you have, especially talking with those long-term investors, not only firms instead of those hedge funds, and do they have this concern? Like Warren Buffett, I remember Jamie Dimon, they all expressed this concern that accounting information getting more frequent could have some negative effects. So do you have also this concern when you talk with industry people?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, I see a lot of this happening, and I think a lot of it is overreaction. A lot of it is because people need to cover their shorts. And a lot of these things happen not because people are right and measure things closely fast, but because they're wrong, the data are wrong, and they have to cover their short. And when you are at that position, hedge fund professionals, if they're wrong, they cut the loss immediately, no matter what it takes. That's generally the philosophy they have. So it happens a lot, and the price adjust, the overreact. That's an opportunity for other people. Yeah. So it happens. Yeah. I mean, this comes to a lot of research that you guys have done here is think about the financial reporting, right? Before a long time ago, Macy's and Walmart report monthly sales number. It's every month they report a number. They actually decreased that to quarterly, and there is a push in the U.S. to push it to a half a year kind of release schedule in terms of releases. But we are the alternative industry is pushing back this trend of less reporting and trying to compensate for that. So this is actually an interesting dynamic. And I sometimes really curious about if you are the CEO, if you are the CFO of the company, what do you think, what do you do in this time in this age, in this area of human history, that everyone else knows your sales number just like you do every day? I wonder what they think and what strategy they adopt in this, in terms of the current data that's available out there. And it's an interesting question. I thought about that. They don't have an answer. Yeah.
Well, as somebody who studies privately held companies oftentimes, it's really interesting that we can start to actually get some essence of what's going on in 99% of the firms that aren't even publicly reporting to begin with.
Yeah.
That we haven't had a good snapshot. I don't know if you do anything with trying to understand who competitors are within that space.
Yeah, I think a lot of people use credit card data to understand large, unicorns, Lyft, Uber, things like that, right? We do a lot of private firms usually when there's some credit problem with them, people ask us because you can trade their credit, right? So it happens, yeah. This is an opportunity. We do that. We cover private companies. Yes.
All right, we have one more question here.
Thank you for being here today and for answering Mike's cold email. I want to touch on selling the location-based data or just other alternative data sources to both the institutional investors and to the firms themselves.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think the alternative data being sold to the firms is information that the firms themselves did not know before, or the firms are just using it to confirm their own internal sources? And then if you, for example, are telling Walmart about certain traffic numbers, are you selling that same kind of data also to the hedge funds? And I guess if it's information that the firms did not know, and you're selling it to them and to the investors, then does that become more gray in terms of the information being deemed private?
Yeah, it's a good question. So private firms, you always know your business, right? The CFO gets sales report every day. That's what I heard. So you probably don't need to know a lot about your customers, but you probably are interested in other customers. Like our sales were not hesitant to sell the Target cross street to a Walmart manager and do vice versa, right? So that's really, but I don't think that's the majority of the use case. But the majority of the use case, for real estate operators that we have as a clients, they want to, so I will give an example, but there are a lot of examples. So, how do you figure out which your trade areas where people come from, right? Today in real estate business, you own the shopping mall, right? You are, I don't know, not to name any, but you own a shopping mall and you have people come in. How do you know where people come from, how much money they make, and so you can decide what tenants to do, right? the standard today is you have a guy sitting in front of a shopping mall and random wave cars stop them, and then ask them a survey of 3 pages. That's the status of art, the status of art. I'm serious, that's how they do it. And they get like 100, 200, 300 people for a shopping mall, that's it, right? We do it in a much more systemic, much more accurate way. So this is just one of the things that today, the technology they have just doesn't catch up. We can provide this to them at a much higher accuracy. Yeah. It's one of the examples, but there are a lot of these things. Yeah. And I think the corporations are slower than hedge funds. The corporate side is slower than hedge fund, right? They're still figure out the surface of data. They're not. You probably heard a story that Target can predict a teenager that's pregnant, right? The story goes on, and for 10 years, 20 years ago, you have the story. But actually, the way, the level of sophistication in terms of data analytics, in terms of analytics, a lot of data, AI, machine learning, actually, I don't think the corporate, even the Walmart is the most innovative, but still they're not like, as sophisticated as a tech company or as the financial industry. Not there yet. So that's why we can provide value. They're actually pretty slow in terms of technology. Yeah.
So I guess just to wrap up here, tons of information, tons of potential value added, but also probably a little bit scary or something at least to think about in terms of what society is going with that. So anyway, thank you very much, Wei. I really appreciate you coming here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was great.